When the wedding planner called to tell me my gift had arrived at the venue, I could hear the panic in her voice. What I'd sent wasn't wrapped in pretty paper or tied with ribbons. It was a manila envelope containing documents that would shatter my sister's perfect day and expose the lies that had torn our family apart. Sometimes the most devastating gifts are the ones that reveal the truth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Alexandra Rivera, and 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was in my family. I was the responsible older sister, the one who always showed up, the mediator who kept everyone together. I had a successful marketing career in downtown San Antonio, a loving relationship with my boyfriend Jordan, and what I believed was an unshakable bond with my younger sister Victoria. That illusion shattered on a humid Tuesday evening in March when Victoria called me, her voice strangely formal. "Alex, we need to talk about the wedding." Victoria had been engaged to Nathan Cross for 8 months. Their October wedding was already the talk of our extended family, a lavish affair at the historic Pearl District venue with 200 guests and enough flowers to stock a nursery. As her maid of honor, I'd spent countless hours helping her plan every detail, from tasting cakes to addressing invitations. "What about it?" I asked, setting down my laptop. I'd been working late again, trying to finish a client presentation, but Victoria always came first when she needed me. "Nathan and I have been talking, and we've decided to make some changes to the wedding party." Something in her tone made my stomach clench. "What kind of changes?" "We're scaling back, making it more intimate, just immediate family." I laughed, confused. "Vic, I am immediate family. I'm your sister." The silence that followed lasted too long. When she finally spoke, her words came out in a rushed whisper. "Alex, I'm really sorry, but we've decided that, well, Nathan's family has some concerns about having you in the wedding party." "Concerns about me? What kind of concerns?" "It's complicated. His parents are very traditional, and they're already uncomfortable with some things. Adding more stress to an already tense situation just doesn't seem wise." I stood up from my desk, pacing to the window that overlooked the San Antonio River. "Victoria, you're not making any sense. What stress? What tension? Nathan's parents have always been polite to me." "It's not about being polite, Alex. It's about fit, about what looks right for their family photos in their social circle." The words hit me like a physical blow. Are you seriously telling me I don't fit into your wedding because of Nathan's parents' social circle? That's not what I'm saying. But her voice lacked conviction. "Then what are you saying? Because it sounds like you're uninviting me from your own sister's wedding party to appease people who barely know me." Victoria's tone shifted, becoming defensive. "I'm not uninviting you from the wedding. You're still invited as a guest. We just think it would be better if you stepped back from the wedding party responsibilities." Better for who? For everyone. For the family harmony, for Nathan's relationship with his parents, for everyone except me? I heard her sigh heavily. "Alex, please don't make this harder than it has to be. This isn't personal." How is removing me from my own sister's wedding party not personal? Because it's about the bigger picture. It's about what's best for my marriage, for my future with Nathan. I need you to understand that. I sank into my desk chair, trying to process what I was hearing. "When did you decide this?" "We've been discussing it for a few weeks." "A few weeks? And you're just telling me now?" "Victoria, the wedding is 7 months away. I've already ordered my maid of honor dress. I've planned your bachelorette party. You can return the dress. And about the bachelorette party, we're going to handle that differently too." The room seemed to spin slightly. What do you mean differently?
Brittany's going to take over as maid of honor. She understands Nathan's family better, and she has experience with these kinds of formal events. Brittany Walsh. Victoria's college roommate, who I'd met exactly 3 times. A girl who'd never shown any interest in Victoria's life until she'd gotten engaged to someone with money. So you're replacing me with someone who barely knows you because she understands Nathan's family? She understands the expectations, the social dynamics. Alex, you have to admit, formal events aren't really your thing. Since when are formal events not my thing? I've been to charity galas for work. I know how to dress appropriately. I know how to behave in social situations. It's not about behavior. It's about, look, Nathan's family comes from old Texas money. There are certain expectations, certain ways things are done. Brittany grew up in that world. And I didn't. You didn't. The brutal honesty in those 2 words cut deeper than any of her previous explanations. This wasn't about Nathan's parents or family harmony or social dynamics. This was about class, about money, about the fact that our middle-class upbringing in the West Side wasn't good enough for the cross-family standards. Does Mom know about this? I asked quietly. Another pause. We discussed it with the family. And they agreed? They understand the situation. The situation being that I'm an embarrassment to the family? Alex, you're being dramatic. No one thinks you're an embarrassment. It's just that sometimes, for the good of the family, we have to make difficult choices. I thought about our parents, Carmen and Miguel Rivera, who had worked double shifts for years to put both Victoria and me through college. I thought about our brother Diego, who joined the military straight out of high school to help support the family. We weren't wealthy, but we were proud. We were close. We were supposed to be a team. Who else knows? Mom, Dad, and Diego, they all agree it's for the best. The betrayal felt complete. Not only had Victoria decided I wasn't good enough for her new life, but she'd convinced our entire family to go along with it. They'd all sat around discussing my inadequacies and reached a consensus that I needed to be demoted in my own sister's wedding. I see. Alex, please don't be upset. You're still my sister. You're still invited to the wedding. You'll still be at the family table, still be in the photos. Just not in the wedding party photos. Right, because those are the important ones. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you meant. You want me there to smile and pretend everything's fine, but you don't want me close enough to taint your perfect wedding with my working-class presence. You're twisting my words. Am I? Because it sounds like you've decided that marrying into money means leaving your family behind, at least the parts of your family that don't fit the image you're trying to create. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. Fair would have been discussing this with me before you made the decision. Fair would have been standing up for your sister instead of throwing me under the bus for people you've known for less than 2 years. Nathan's family is going to be my family too. And what about the family you already have? The line went quiet for a long moment. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was cold. The family I already have should want what's best for me. We do want what's best for you. We just didn't realize that meant we weren't good enough to be part of it. I hung up before she could respond, my hands trembling as I set the phone down. Outside my window, the San Antonio River sparkled with evening lights, tourists strolling along the riverwalk without a care in the world. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but my entire world had shifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Please don't tell Jordan about this yet. We want to handle the family conversations first. Even in her apology, she was trying to control the narrative, trying to manage my reaction and my relationships. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Too late. He's right here." It was a lie. Jordan was at his own apartment across town, but something inside me had snapped, the same way it had snapped for that woman in that story about Thanksgiving boundaries. I was done being managed, done being convenient, done being the family member who absorbed everyone else's poor treatment for the sake of keeping the peace. What I didn't know yet was that this phone call was just the beginning. that the decision to remove me from Victoria's wedding party was part of a much larger deception, and that in 7 months, I would walk into that Pearl District venue carrying the truth in a manila envelope that would stop the ceremony cold and expose lies that went far deeper than social climbing and family embarrassment. But first, I had to discover just how far my family was willing to go to erase me from Victoria's new life.
The next morning, I woke up hoping the previous night had been some kind of stress-induced nightmare. But my phone showed 3 missed calls from my mother and a text that made my stomach drop. "Mija, we need to talk. Come for dinner Sunday. The whole family will be there." Carmen Rivera had a way of making family dinners sound like court summons when she was upset. I knew exactly what this was about. Damage control after Victoria's bombshell. I'd barely finished my coffee when Jordan knocked on my apartment door. One look at his face told me Victoria had been busy. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside with the same serious expression my sister had used on the phone. "Let me guess, Victoria called you?" Jordan ran his hand through his black hair, a nervous habit I'd grown to recognize. "She asked me to come over and talk to you about being understanding." "Understanding about what? Being kicked out of my own sister's wedding?" "She said you misunderstood the situation, that Nathan's family has some cultural concerns about the wedding party composition." I stared at him. "Cultural concerns?" "Jordan, Nathan's family is about as white and Protestant as they come. What cultural concerns could they possibly have with me?" That's what I asked her. She said it was complicated family dynamics that outsiders wouldn't understand. Outsiders. The word stung. Is that what we are now? Jordan reached for my hand. "Alex, I think there's more going on here than Victoria is telling anyone. Some of the things she said didn't add up." "Like what?" "Like when I asked her why Nathan's parents would have an issue with you specifically, she couldn't give me a straight answer. She kept talking around it, mentioning things like different backgrounds and maintaining family harmony." I pulled my hand away, pacing to the kitchen. "Did she tell you about Brittany taking over as maid of honor?" "Yeah, that part really didn't make sense." "Alex, you've been planning this wedding for months. You know Victoria better than anyone. Why would she suddenly decide that a girl she roomed with for 1 semester in college understands her better than her own sister?" "Because Brittany's daddy owns half of Alamo Heights, and her trust fund could probably buy Nathan's family's ranch twice over." Jordan's expression darkened. "This is about money. This is about Victoria deciding that marrying Nathan means upgrading everything in her life, including her family." My phone rang. Mom again. "Answer it," Jordan said. "Better to know what you're walking into Sunday." I reluctantly picked up. "Hi, Mom." "Alexandra." Her voice was strained, formal. "We need to discuss what happened with your sister." "You mean we need to discuss how you all decided to humiliate me without giving me a chance to defend myself?" "Nobody wanted to humiliate you, Mija. This is about what's best for Victoria's future." "And what about what's best for our family?" A pause. "Sometimes what's best for the family means making sacrifices for the member who needs the most support." "Support?" "Mom, Victoria is marrying into one of the wealthiest families in San Antonio. How much support does she need?" "You don't understand the pressure she's under. Nathan's mother has very specific ideas about how things should be done. Mrs. Cross has been planning society weddings for 30 years. And I'm not society enough for her vision?" "It's not about being good enough, Alexandra. It's about fit, about making Victoria's transition into Nathan's world as smooth as possible." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her transition? "Mom, she's not joining a witness protection program. She's getting married. To a family that's very different from ours. A family with expectations and traditions that we're still learning to navigate. Since when do the Riveras bow down to anyone's expectations? Since your sister fell in love with someone whose family's approval could determine the success of her marriage." The words hung in the air, like a challenge. My mother, who had raised us to be proud of our heritage, our work ethic, our tight-knit family bonds, was asking me to step aside so Victoria could impress people who thought we weren't good enough? What did Dad say about this? Another pause. Your father wants what's best for Victoria. That's not what I asked. He thinks maybe it's time for Victoria to start her own traditions with Nathan's family. My heart sank. Miguel Rivera, who had worked construction for 25 years to put his daughters through college, who had never missed a single one of Victoria's dance recitals or my academic award ceremonies, had agreed that I wasn't suitable for his younger daughter's wedding party. And Diego? Diego thinks you should be supportive of Victoria's decision. Did any of you think to ask what I thought? Or did you all just assume I'd go along with being demoted to spare everyone's feelings? Alexandra, please, come to dinner Sunday. Let's discuss this as a family.
Discuss what? It sounds like the family already made their decision. We want to explain. There's nothing to explain, Mom. You've all made it clear where I stand. I hung up and turned to Jordan, who had been listening with growing concern. They're all in on it, I said quietly. Alex, this isn't like your family. I've known them for 2 years. They've always been proud of who they are, where they come from. This doesn't make sense. He was right. The Riveras had always been a united front. When I'd struggled in college, the whole family had rallied around me. When Diego had deployment anxiety, we'd all pitched in to support him. When Victoria had been heartbroken over her high school boyfriend, the family had circled the wagons. Unless... Jordan's voice trailed off. Unless what? Unless someone's been working very hard to convince them that this is what's best for Victoria. I thought about that for a moment. You think Victoria's been manipulating them? I think Victoria's been getting advice from someone who has a very specific agenda, and I don't think that someone is Nathan. What do you mean? Jordan pulled out his phone and showed me Victoria's Instagram from the past few months. Look at this. Really look at it. I scrolled through the posts. Victoria at charity events I'd never heard her mention. Victoria at country club functions with women I didn't recognize. Victoria shopping at boutiques that cost more than my monthly rent. And in many of the photos, the same face appeared repeatedly. Brittany Walsh. She's been spending a lot of time with Brittany lately, I observed. More than that, look at the captions. Look at the way she talks about these events, these people. I read more carefully. Posts about finding your tribe and growing into the person you're meant to be and leaving behind what no longer serves you. This doesn't sound like Victoria. No, it doesn't. This sounds like someone who's been coached on how to talk about social climbing without calling it social climbing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Alexandra. This is Brittany Walsh, Victoria's maid of honor. I was hoping we could grab coffee this week to discuss some wedding details. I know this transition is hard, but I want you to know I'm committed to honoring the work you've already done. I showed the message to Jordan. She wants to meet with me to discuss wedding details after taking over my role? That's either the most tone-deaf message I've ever seen or what? Or she's been told to manage you, to make sure you don't cause problems. I stared at the message, reading between the lines. This transition is hard implied that my demotion was inevitable. Honoring the work you've already done suggested that my contributions were now history. I'm going to meet with her, I decided. Alex, are you sure? This could be a setup. It definitely is a setup, but I want to know what I'm really dealing with here. If Brittany's the one pulling Victoria's strings, I need to understand what her endgame is. And if she's not? If this is really coming from Nathan's family? I looked at the Instagram photos again, studying the timeline. Victoria's transformation hadn't started when she'd gotten engaged. It had started 6 months before that, when Brittany had moved back to San Antonio and reconnected with her old college roommate. Then I'll deal with that too. But Jordan, something about this whole situation feels
orchestrated, like someone's been playing a very long game. What I didn't know yet was how right I was, or that Brittany Walsh had been planning Victoria's social makeover for over a year, with goals that extended far beyond just being maid of honor at a fancy wedding. Sunday dinner was going to be very interesting.
I met Brittany Walsh at Rosella Coffee on Thursday afternoon, choosing a busy location where I'd feel safe and she couldn't manipulate the conversation too easily. I arrived 10 minutes early to secure a corner table where I could see the entire cafe, a habit I'd picked up from too many tense business meetings. Brittany walked in precisely on time, and I had to admit, she looked the part of someone who belonged in Nathan's social circle. Designer handbag, perfectly styled blonde hair, and an outfit that probably cost more than my car payment. She spotted me immediately and approached with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Alexandra, thank you so much for meeting me." She air-kissed me like we were old friends, then settled into the chair across from me. "I got you a lavender latte. Victoria mentioned it's your favorite." I hadn't ordered anything yet, and lavender lattes weren't my favorite. Victoria knew I preferred simple black coffee, but I accepted the drink with a neutral smile. "So," Brittany began, pulling out a leather portfolio, "I want to start by saying how much I admire everything you've done for Victoria's wedding planning. Your spreadsheets are incredibly thorough." My spreadsheets? Oh, yes! Victoria shared all the planning documents with me. The vendor contacts, the timeline, the budget breakdowns. Really impressive work. I felt a flash of anger. Those spreadsheets contained months of research, phone calls, and negotiations. Victoria had handed them over to her replacement, like I was some kind of unpaid wedding planner. "I'm glad they're useful," I said carefully. "Absolutely, which is why I wanted to discuss how we can transition smoothly without disrupting any of your existing relationships with the vendors." Transition? Brittany opened her portfolio and slid a printed document across the table. "I've put together a handover plan. Since you've built such strong relationships with the florist and the caterer, I thought you could introduce me and help facilitate the transfer of contact management." I stared at the document. It was a detailed timeline of how I would systematically introduce Brittany to every vendor, brief her on all ongoing negotiations, and then step back while she took over all communications. It was thorough, professional, and completely insulting. You want me to train my replacement? I prefer to think of it as ensuring continuity for Victoria's benefit. And what do I get out of this arrangement? Brittany's smile became more genuine, like she'd been waiting for this question. "Well, obviously your primary concern is Victoria's happiness, but I also think this could be an opportunity for you to focus on other aspects of your relationship with her." Such as family bonding, sister time, the emotional support that only a sibling can provide. She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, Victoria's been under tremendous pressure lately. Nathan's mother has very specific expectations, and, frankly, some of the wedding planning decisions have been overwhelming for her." "Which decisions?" "Oh, the guest list complications, the vendor requirements, the social dynamics of blending two very different families." "Different how?" Brittany paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Well, Nathan's family has been part of San Antonio society for generations. They have certain traditions, ways of doing things that might seem foreign to families with different backgrounds." There it was, the polite way of saying my family wasn't good enough. "And you understand these traditions?" "I grew up in that world. My family's been friends with the Cross family for years. I actually introduced Victoria and Nathan at my parents' anniversary party last year." This was news to me. Victoria had told everyone she'd met Nathan at a charity auction. I thought they met at the Children's Hospital fundraiser. "Oh, well, technically yes, but I was the one who suggested Victoria attend that event and made sure Nathan was at her table." Brittany's smile turned smug. Sometimes love needs a little orchestration. A chill ran down my spine. "You set him up."
I facilitated their meeting. Victoria was so lost after her breakup with that musician. What was his name? Carlos? He needed someone stable, someone who could give her the life she deserved. Carlos Martinez had been Victoria's boyfriend for 2 years, a talented guitarist who taught music lessons and played weekend gigs. Victoria had been crazy about him, until suddenly she wasn't. The breakup had been abrupt and painful, with Victoria claiming they'd grown apart. Carlos seemed happy with Victoria. Did she? Because when I reconnected with her last year, she spent hours telling me how frustrated she was, how she felt like she was settling for a small life when she wanted so much more. She never mentioned feeling that way to me. Well, you were busy with your own career, and honestly, Alexandra, sometimes it's easier to confide in friends who understand your ambitions than in family members who might judge them.
The implication was clear. I was the judgmental sister who couldn't understand Victoria's desire for a better life. So you decided Nathan would be a better match. I thought Nathan could offer Victoria opportunities that Carlos never could. Stability, social connections, financial security, the chance to be part of something bigger than herself. And all she had to do was change everything about who she was. Brittany's expression hardened slightly. She didn't change who she was. She grew into who she was always meant to be. Not everyone is content with limiting themselves to their childhood circumstances. Our childhood circumstances weren't something to be ashamed of. Of course not. But they also don't have to define Victoria's future, do they? I sipped the lavender latte, buying time to process what I was hearing. Brittany hadn't just introduced Victoria to Nathan, she'd actively broken up Victoria's previous relationship and engineered a complete social makeover. What about the wedding party situation? I asked. Was that your idea, too? That was a practical necessity. Mrs. Cross has very specific ideas about how her son's wedding should look. She's been planning this day in her mind for years, long before Nathan met Victoria. And I don't fit her vision? It's not personal, Alexandra. It's about creating the right aesthetic, the right message about the kind of family Nathan is joining. The message being that he's not actually joining our family. Brittany set down her coffee cup. The message being that Victoria is joining his family, and that requires certain adjustments, such as erasing her sister from the most important day of her life, such as ensuring that Victoria's transition into San Antonio society goes smoothly. Mrs. Cross has already faced criticism from her social circle about Nathan's choice. She needs the wedding to demonstrate that Victoria can fit into their world. Criticism about what? About Nathan choosing a girl from your neighborhood, from a family without social connections. Mrs. Cross has spent months defending Victoria's suitability as a daughter-in-law. The pieces were clicking into place. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about Victoria proving she belonged in a world that saw her family as beneath them. And having me as maid of honor would undermine that proof? Having you in a prominent role would reinforce the perception that Victoria hasn't truly elevated herself, that she's still tied to a life that Nathan's family would prefer she leave behind. So the solution is to make me disappear? The solution is to help Victoria succeed in her new life by not creating obstacles to her acceptance. I stood up, leaving the barely touched latte on the table. This conversation is over. Alexandra, wait! I hope you understand that this isn't about you personally. It's about what's best for Victoria's future. No, Brittany, this is about you playing puppet master with my sister's life so you can maintain your influence in your precious social circle. That's not... You broke up her relationship with Carlos, you introduced her to Nathan, you've been coaching her on how to talk, how to dress, how to behave, and now you're systematically removing anyone from her life who might remind her of who she used to be. Brittany's mask finally slipped. Victoria came to me for help because she was tired of being ordinary. I gave her the tools to become extraordinary. If you can't support her growth, maybe the problem isn't with the wedding party arrangement. I left without another word, but Brittany's parting shot followed me out.
Sunday dinner should be interesting. I'm curious to see how your family reacts when Victoria tells them about the guest list changes. Guest list changes. There were more surprises coming. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Hope your meeting with Brittany went well. She's so excited to work together. BTY, can we talk before Sunday dinner? There are a few more wedding details we need to discuss. More details, more changes, more ways to erase me from her new life. But now, I knew who was really pulling the strings.
Victoria called me Friday evening just as I was settling in with takeout and trying to process everything Brittany had revealed. Her voice carried that forced cheerfulness I was beginning to recognize as her new default setting. Alex, how was your coffee with Brittany? She said you two had a really productive conversation. Productive isn't the word I'd use. Oh, a pause. Well, I'm sure you'll warm up to her once you get to know her better. She really does have Victoria's best interests at heart. Your best interests, you mean? Right, of course. Sorry, I'm just tired. Wedding planning is exhausting. I noticed she'd referred to herself in third person, like she was talking about someone else entirely. Victoria, we need to discuss something Brittany mentioned. She said there are guest list changes? Another pause, longer this time. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Can I come over? It's easier to explain in person. 30 minutes later, Victoria sat on my couch looking more nervous than I'd seen her since she'd called to remove me from the wedding party. She kept fidgeting with her engagement ring, a massive diamond that Nathan had probably spent more on than my parents made in 6 months. So, about the guest list, she began, not meeting my eyes. What about it? Well, Nathan's family has been reviewing the invitations, and they've made some suggestions about, streamlining. Streamlining how? Victoria pulled out her phone and opened what looked like a spreadsheet. They've helped us identify some areas where we can reduce the count to make the event more intimate. Victoria, you already have 200 people invited. How much more intimate can it get? That's just it. 200 is actually quite large for the kind of wedding Nathan's family typically hosts. They prefer smaller, more exclusive events. I had a sinking feeling about where this was going. Who's being cut? Well, some of your college friends who don't really know Nathan. Like who? Like Sarah and Jennifer from your sorority, and your coworker Mike and his wife, and she scrolled through the list. Most of your plus ones, actually. My plus ones? Victoria, I gave you a list of 8 people. These are my closest friends. I know, and I feel terrible about it, but Nathan's family has explained that wedding guest lists should reflect the couple's shared social circle, not individual histories that don't overlap. Individual histories. These people have been part of my life for years. They've supported me, celebrated with me. But they don't know Nathan, and they don't really fit with the overall aesthetic of the guest list. Aesthetic? I stared at her. You're curating your wedding guests based on aesthetic? It's about creating a cohesive experience, about ensuring that everyone who attends understands the significance of the event and can contribute meaningfully to the celebration. That's not you talking. That's Brittany or Nathan's mother or whoever's been coaching you on how to justify cutting my friends. Nobody's coaching me on anything. I'm making these decisions because I want my wedding to be perfect. Perfect for who? Because it's certainly not perfect for me. Victoria finally looked up from her phone. Alex, I need you to understand something. This wedding isn't just about Nathan and me. It's about 2 families coming together, and sometimes that means making compromises. What compromises is Nathan's family making? They're accepting me into their family despite our different backgrounds. That's not a compromise. That's basic human decency. You don't understand the pressure they're under. Nathan's extended family, their friends, their business associates, they're all watching to see how this plays out. And God forbid any of them should have to meet someone from our neighborhood. That's not fair, isn't it? Victoria, look at what's happening.
First, I get kicked out of the wedding party. Now my friends are getting disinvited. What's next? Are you going to ask mom and dad to sit in the back so they don't accidentally end up in any important photos? Victoria's silence was telling. Oh my God, you've already thought about that, haven't you? The seating chart is complicated. There are protocol considerations about where certain families should be positioned. Protocol considerations. I laughed bitterly. Listen to yourself. 6 months ago, you would have told anyone with protocol considerations about our family's seating to go to hell. 6 months ago, I wasn't planning a wedding that would be covered in the society pages and attended by half the San Antonio elite. And that matters more than your family feeling welcome and respected? Victoria stood up, pacing to my window. You're not seeing the bigger picture, Alex. This wedding is an opportunity. For me, for our family. Nathan's connections could open doors that have been closed to people like us for generations.
People like us? Working class people. People without inherited wealth or social standing. People who have to earn everything they get instead of having it handed to them. And you think marrying Nathan is going to change that? I think marrying Nathan is going to give me access to a world where I can make a real difference, where I can use influence and resources to help people instead of just surviving. I studied my sister's face, looking for any trace of the girl who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms, who used to defend our family fiercely against any criticism. When did you start seeing our life as something to escape from? When I realized it didn't have to be our ceiling. Our ceiling? Victoria. Mom and Dad raised 2 daughters who graduated college debt-free, who have successful careers, who will spend their entire lives working for other people instead of being the people who create opportunities for others. There's nothing wrong with working for a living. There's nothing wrong with wanting more than that either. My phone buzzed with a text. Jordan. How's it going with Victoria? I glanced at the message, and Victoria caught the movement. Are you texting Jordan about our conversation? He asked how things were going. Alex, I need you to understand something. He's a wonderful guy. But he's also part of the reason Nathan's family has concerns about our family's stability. Excuse me? His job situation is unpredictable. He's a freelance graphic designer who doesn't have steady income or health insurance. He lives in that tiny apartment downtown. And honestly, at 28, shouldn't he have more to show for himself? I felt like I'd been slapped. Jordan is building his own business. He's talented, hardworking. He's irresponsible, and your relationship with him reflects poorly on the family's judgment and priorities. According to who? According to people who understand what financial stability and professional success actually look like. You mean according to Brittany and Nathan's mother? According to people who want what's best for everyone in this family. Best for everyone, or best for your image? Victoria sat back down, her expression softening slightly. Alex, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect all of us. Nathan's family has resources that could benefit everyone. They've already mentioned that they might have opportunities for Dad's construction company, and they have connections in marketing that could help your career. In exchange for what? In exchange for showing that we're the kind of family they want to be associated with. The kind of family that abandons the people we love to impress strangers. The kind of family that makes smart choices about our future. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the person sitting in my living room. This wasn't the Victoria who had cried on my shoulder when Carlos broke up with her, or when she broke up with him, as I was now beginning to suspect. This wasn't the Victoria who had spent hours helping me study for my marketing certification exam. This wasn't the Victoria who had defended our family's traditions and values against anyone who questioned them. What did you do to Carlos?
I asked quietly. What do you mean? I mean, Brittany mentioned that she helped you through your breakup with him. But you never told me you were unhappy with Carlos. You never mentioned wanting to end things. So what really happened? Victoria's face flushed. Carlos and I grew apart. It happens. Try again. Alex, my relationship with Carlos has nothing to do with everything. It has everything to do with everything. Because if Brittany convinced you to leave a guy you loved so she could set you up with Nathan, then this whole thing has been orchestrated from the beginning. Victoria stood up abruptly. I think I should go. Did you love Carlos? That's not relevant anymore. Did you love Carlos? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. It doesn't matter what I felt. Carlos couldn't give me the life I wanted. The life you wanted, or the life Brittany told you you should want? Sunday dinner is going to be difficult enough without you attacking me about ancient history. Ancient history? Victoria, it was 8 months ago. She headed for the door, then turned back. Alex, I need you to be supportive on Sunday. The family needs to present a united front. A united front? For what? For the choices I've made, for the life I'm building with Nathan. And if I can't do that? Victoria's expression hardened. Then maybe you should reconsider whether you want to be part of this family at all. She left without another word, leaving me alone with the devastating realization that my sister wasn't just changing her wedding plans, she was systematically cutting ties with everyone who knew who she used to be. Starting with me. Sunday arrived with the kind of oppressive Texas heat that makes everything feel more intense. I spent the morning rehearsing what I wanted to say to my family, but every conversation I imagined ended badly. How do you tell people you've loved your entire life that they're choosing someone else's approval over their own daughter? Jordan offered to come with me for moral support, but I knew his presence would only make things worse. Victoria had already painted him as part of the problem. Call me if you need an escape route, he said, kissing me goodbye. I'll keep my phone on. The drive to my parents' house in the West Side took 20 minutes, but it felt like an hour. The neighborhood looked exactly the same as it had when I was growing up. Modest homes with well-maintained yards, kids playing in the streets, families gathering on front porches. It was the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and looked out for each other. The kind of place Victoria now saw as something to escape. I pulled into the driveway behind Diego's pickup truck and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. Through the kitchen window, I could see my family moving around, setting the table for our traditional Sunday meal. For 26 years, these dinners had been sacred. No matter what was happening in our individual lives, we came together every Sunday to reconnect as a family. Now it felt like walking into enemy territory. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her expression carefully neutral. Mija, you're here. Did you think I wouldn't come? With everything that's been happening, she stepped aside to let me in. We weren't sure. The house smelt like my childhood. Mom's homemade salsa, fresh tortillas, and the carnitas she'd been cooking since dawn. But the atmosphere was wrong. Instead of the usual warm chaos of family gathering, there was a tension that made my skin crawl. Victoria was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with Diego, and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. She'd dressed up for the occasion in a sundress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was attending a charity luncheon rather than a family dinner. Alex! Diego stood up to hug me, but even his embrace felt strained. Good to see you. Is it? He pulled back, studying my face. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm curious whether you actually want me here or if you're just going through the motions because Mom told you to be polite. Alexandra, Dad's voice carried a warning as he entered from the living room. We don't start dinner with accusations. No, we start dinner with pretending everything's fine while we systematically exclude family members from important events. Victoria looked up from her phone. Can we please not do this before we eat? Do what? Talk about the fact that you've decided I'm not good enough for your new life? That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Because I've had several very enlightening conversations this week, and I'm starting to understand exactly what's happening here. Mom bustled around the kitchen, clearly hoping to distract from the mounting tension. Let's just sit down and eat. We can talk after. No, Mom, we're going to talk now, because I'm tired of being managed and manipulated and lied to by people who are supposed to love me. The room went silent. Dad pulled out his chair and sat down heavily. Alexandra, we all love you. That's not in question. Isn't it? Because love doesn't usually involve humiliating someone to impress strangers. Victoria's phone buzzed and she glanced at it automatically. I caught a glimpse of the message. How's it going? Remember what we discussed. Stay strong. B. Brittany's checking in on you? Victoria's face flushed. She's just being supportive. Supportive of what? Your decision to erase your family? I'm not erasing anyone. I'm trying to build a life that has room for everyone. Everyone except my friends, everyone except Jordan's career, everyone except me in any meaningful capacity. Diego leaned forward. Alex, maybe if you tried to understand Victoria's position, her position. Diego, what's Victoria's position exactly? That she's embarrassed by us? That she needs to prove to Nathan's family that she's better than where she came from? That's not what this is about, Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then explain it to me. Explain why my friends aren't good enough for your wedding. Explain why Jordan's career isn't stable enough for your family image. Explain why I can't be trusted to stand next to you on the most important day of your life. Mom sat down at the table, her hands clasped tightly together. Mija, sometimes we have to make difficult choices. For who? For Victoria's happiness or for the approval of people who think we're beneath them? For Victoria's future, Dad said firmly, for her marriage to succeed.
And you think her marriage will succeed if it's built on the foundation of rejecting her family? We're not rejecting anyone, Victoria protested. I'm asking for understanding, for support as I navigate a complicated situation. Complicated how? Victoria looked around the table, seeming to draw strength from our parents' supportive expressions. Nathan's family has certain expectations. They've been part of San Antonio society for generations. They have traditions, protocols that don't include people like us. Protocols that require careful consideration of how we present ourselves and our family. I stared at her. Listen to yourself, Victoria. You're talking about our family like we're a PR problem that needs to be managed. That's not what I'm doing. Yes, it is. You're doing exactly what Brittany has coached you to do. You're creating distance between yourself and anyone who might remind Nathan's family that you used to be one of us. Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw a flash of the sister I remembered. Alex, you don't understand the pressure. What pressure? The pressure to be someone you're not? The pressure to pretend that the people who raised you and loved you and supported you your entire life are somehow inadequate? The pressure to make sure my marriage doesn't fail before it starts. The words hung in the air like a confession. Victoria immediately looked like she wanted to take them back. What do you mean, fail before it starts? I asked quietly. Victoria glanced around the table, clearly wishing someone would rescue her. When no one did, she took a shaky breath. Nathan's mother has made it very clear that she has concerns about our compatibility, about whether I can successfully integrate into their family and social circle. And she's threatened what, exactly, if you can't? She hasn't threatened anything. She's just
expressed concerns that Nathan might be making a mistake. A mistake marrying you. A mistake marrying someone who might not be able to adapt to their lifestyle and expectations. I felt sick. So this entire charade, cutting me from the wedding party, disinviting my friends, criticizing Jordan, it's all to prove to Nathan's mother that you're willing to abandon your family for hers? It's to prove that I can be the kind of wife Nathan needs. The kind of wife who's ashamed of where she comes from. The kind of wife who can help Nathan maintain his family reputation and business relationships. Their business relationships depend on you rejecting us. Their business relationships depend on them being associated with the right kind of people. The admission hit the table like a bomb. Even our parents looked shocked by her bluntness. The right kind of people, I repeated slowly. And we're the wrong kind? Victoria seemed to realize what she had said. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you meant. And the fact that you're willing to say it out loud in front of Mom and Dad shows how completely Brittany has brainwashed you. Brittany hasn't brainwashed anyone. She's helped me understand what's at stake. What's at stake is your soul, Victoria, and you're trading it for acceptance from people who will never actually accept you. That's not true. It is true. Because if Nathan's family really accepted you, they wouldn't be asking you to choose between them and us. They'd welcome all of us because we're part of what makes you who you are. I stood up from the table, looking around at my family. But you know what the saddest part is? It's not that Nathan's family doesn't accept us. It's that you've decided we're not worth fighting for. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Alex, please, I need you to support me. I've supported you your entire life. I've cheered for you, defended you, celebrated every success, and comforted you through every failure. But I won't support you destroying yourself to impress people who see you as a charity case they're graciously elevating. That's not how they see me. That's exactly how they see you. And the fact that you can't recognize it shows how far you've fallen into their trap. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. When you're ready to remember who you are and where you come from, call me. But until then, don't ask me to pretend that watching you erase yourself is something I can support. Alexandra, wait! Dad's voice followed me. We're family. We work things out. No, Dad. Family works things out. What Victoria is asking us to do is participate in our own dismissal, and I won't do it. As I drove away, my phone exploded with texts. Victoria, my parents, Diego, all of them wanting to continue the conversation, to find some compromise that would make everyone happy. But I was done compromising, and I was definitely done being managed. It was time to find out exactly what Brittany Walsh's endgame really was.
That Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. I couldn't focus on marketing campaigns and client presentations when my entire family was imploding. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a notepad, and a growing determination to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I started with social media, but this time I dug deeper than Victoria's recent posts. I went back 2 years, tracking the timeline of her transformation. What I found was disturbing. The changes had started subtly in January of the previous year, right around the time Brittany had moved back to San Antonio. Victoria's posts began shifting from family gatherings and casual friend hangouts to more upscale events, art gallery openings, charity fundraisers, wine tastings at expensive restaurants. But here's what was interesting. In many of the early photos, Victoria looked uncomfortable, overdressed in some shots, underdressed in others, like someone learning to navigate a world she didn't understand. Then something changed around March. The awkwardness disappeared. Victoria's outfits became more sophisticated, her poses more confident, and Brittany appeared in more and more photos, always positioned as the insider showing Victoria the ropes. I cross-referenced the timeline with Victoria's relationship with Carlos. According to her social media, they'd been happy through February. Photos of them at casual restaurants, hiking trails, local music venues, Carlos playing guitar at their friend's house party, Victoria laughing at his jokes, her head on his shoulder during movie nights. The last photo of them together was dated March 15th. After that, nothing. No breakup announcement, no gradual fade. Carlos simply disappeared from Victoria's online life like he'd never existed. Nathan first appeared in a photo dated April 20th, a charity auction where Victoria and Brittany were seated at a table sponsored by Cross Industries. The caption read, "So grateful for friends who introduce you to new experiences." I grabbed my phone and dialed Carlos. I hadn't spoken to him since the breakup, but we'd always gotten along well. He answered on the third ring. "Alex, is everything okay?" "Hey, Carlos. I know this is weird, but I need to ask you something about Victoria." A pause. "Is she all right?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Can we meet for coffee? I have some questions about how things ended between you two." I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, it's important." Another pause. "Okay, but not somewhere public. Can you come to my apartment?" An hour later, I sat in Carlos's small but cozy living room in Southtown, surrounded by his guitars and music equipment. He looked exactly the same as I remembered. Kind eyes, gentle manner, the type of guy who'd give you his jacket if you were cold. "Alex, I have to ask, does Victoria know you're here?" "No, and honestly, I'm not sure the Victoria I know exists anymore." Carlos nodded sadly. "That's why I agreed to see you. The Victoria who broke up with me wasn't the woman I fell in love with." "What do you mean?" He rubbed his forehead, clearly struggling with how much to share. "The last few months of our relationship were confusing. Victoria started talking about things she'd never cared about before. Social status, financial security, long-term planning in ways that made our relationship sound like a business arrangement." "When did that start?" "January, maybe February, right around the time she reconnected with that friend from college." "Brittany." "Yeah, Victoria started spending a lot of time with her, going to events I wasn't invited to. When I'd ask about them, she'd say they were networking opportunities or cultural experiences that I wouldn't understand. Because you're a musician." "Because I don't have money or social connections." His voice was bitter. "Victoria started seeing my career as limited. She'd make comments about my hobby and suggest I needed to think more seriously about my future." That doesn't sound like Victoria. It wasn't. The Victoria I knew loved music, loved art, loved creativity. She used to say that watching me play guitar was like watching someone's soul come alive. I felt a pang of sadness for what had been lost. "What happened the night you broke up?" Carlos was quiet for a long moment. "He came over after one of those events with Brittany, some charity thing at a country club. She was different, agitated, emotional, but also determined. She said we needed to talk about our future." "And?" "She asked me about my 5-year plan, my financial goals, whether I'd ever considered a more stable career path. When I told her I was happy teaching music and playing gigs, that I was building something meaningful even if it wasn't traditionally lucrative, she looked at me like I'd disappointed her. Then what?"
Then she said she'd been doing a lot of thinking about what she wanted from life, that she'd realized she needed someone who could match her ambitions and provide the kind of security she deserved. Security you couldn't provide? Security I didn't even know she wanted. Alex, we'd talked about moving in together. We'd looked at apartments. We'd made plans for a weekend trip to Austin. Then suddenly, I wasn't enough anymore. I felt angry on his behalf. Did she mention Nathan? Not directly, but she did say that Brittany had helped her realize there were other options, better options. Better men, you mean? Better prospects. That's the word she used. She said Brittany had shown her that settling for potential instead of achievement was a mistake she couldn't afford to make. Those weren't Victoria's words. No, they weren't. Victoria never talked like that. She never reduced people to their economic value. Carlos stood up and walked to his keyboard, running his fingers over the keys without making sound. The worst part was how clinical it all was. Like she'd rehearsed what to say. There was no emotion, no regret, just a business-like explanation of why our relationship no longer made sense. Did you fight for her? I tried. I told her that love wasn't about financial security, that we could build something beautiful together, even if it wasn't conventional. But she said I was being naive, that love without practical compatibility was just fantasy. And you never heard from her again? Not directly, but I heard through mutual friends that she was dating someone new within a month, someone with money. I thought about Nathan Cross, with his family's ranch and his trust fund and his mother's social connections. Carlos, do you think Victoria actually stopped loving you? He turned back to me, his expression heartbroken. I think Victoria was convinced that loving me was a luxury she couldn't afford. By Brittany. By someone who made her believe that wanting more from life meant rejecting what she already had. I left Carlos's apartment with a clearer picture of Brittany's manipulation, but also with more questions. If Brittany had convinced Victoria to leave a man she loved for social advancement, what else was she capable of? That evening, I decided to do some research on Brittany herself, a deep dive into her background, her connections, her motivations. What I found made everything much more disturbing. Brittany Walsh wasn't just some society girl playing matchmaker. She was a professional social climber with a pattern of inserting herself into other people's relationships and life decisions. Her social media showed a history of mentoring young women from middle-class backgrounds, helping them upgrade their lives and relationships. But here's what was really interesting. The women in Brittany's orbit had a tendency to become isolated from their original support systems. Old friends disappeared from their social media, family relationships became strained, and they all ended up dependent on Brittany for guidance and social validation. It was a classic manipulation tactic. Create dependency by destroying existing relationships, then position yourself as the only reliable source of support and advice. But why Victoria? What made my sister a target? The answer came in an article from the San Antonio Business Journal that I found buried in a Google search. Nathan Cross wasn't just a wealthy heir. He was set to inherit control of Cross Industries, a construction and development company with contracts throughout South Texas. And guess whose construction company had been struggling to break into the high-end commercial market? My father's. Miguel Rivera Construction had been bidding on major projects for years without success, always losing out to companies with better connections and established relationships with the city's elite. Brittany hadn't targeted Victoria randomly. She'd identified her as the perfect vehicle for gaining access to Cross Industries' construction networks. By positioning herself as Victoria's closest friend and confidant, Brittany would have insider access to Nathan's family business through her influence over his wife. It was brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely heartless. But I still didn't understand how the wedding played into her larger scheme. Why was it so important to remove me from the picture? The answer to that question would come in the most unexpected way possible. As I sat researching late into the night, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, the voice was familiar. Alexandra, this is Mrs. Cross, Nathan's mother. I believe we need to talk.
The last person I expected to hear from was Eleanor Cross, the woman who supposedly found my family so unsuitable that my presence in the wedding party would damage her family's reputation. Her voice was crisp, authoritative, with the kind of confidence that comes from never doubting your right to be heard. Mrs. Cross, this is unexpected. I imagine it is. Could we meet tomorrow, privately? There are some things about your sister's wedding that I think you should know. My mind raced. Was this a trap? Some kind of test orchestrated by Brittany? What kind of things?
The kind that are better discussed in person. Are you familiar with the Pearl Farmers Market? There's a coffee shop called Local Coffee. Can you meet me there at 10 o'clock? Why do you want to see me? A pause. Because, Ms. Rivera, I'm beginning to suspect that we've both been manipulated by the same person. I barely slept that night, running through every possible scenario for why Nathan's mother would want to meet with me. By morning, I was exhausted, but determined to get answers. Local Coffee was busy with the usual Tuesday morning crowd, freelancers with laptops, business meetings, tourists exploring the Pearl District. I spotted Mrs. Cross immediately. She was exactly what I had expected, elegant, impeccably dressed, sitting with perfect posture at a corner table. What I hadn't expected was how tired she looked. Ms. Rivera, she stood as I approached, extending a manicured hand. Thank you for coming. Mrs. Cross, I shook her hand, studying her face for any sign of what this was about. Please, call me Eleanor, and may I call you Alexandra? I nodded, taking the seat across from her. She'd already ordered 2 lattes, which sat cooling on the small table between us. I'll get straight to the point, Eleanor began. How long have you known Brittany Walsh? Brittany? I just met her recently. She was Victoria's college roommate, but they had lost touch until recently. Eleanor's expression sharpened. They had lost touch? Yes, Brittany moved back to San Antonio and they reconnected. Why? Because Brittany Walsh has been a fixture in my social circle for 3 years. She's been to my home dozens of times, attended our family events, positioned herself as a close friend of the family. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. 3 years? But Victoria only met Nathan 8 months ago. Exactly. Eleanor leaned forward. Brittany has been talking about Victoria for 2 years, long before Nathan ever met her. Talking about her how? Describing her as this wonderful friend from college who would be perfect for Nathan if only she could be properly introduced to our world. Brittany made it sound like she was doing us a favor by bringing Victoria into our circle. My coffee sat untouched as I processed this information. You're saying Brittany planned their relationship from the beginning? I'm saying Brittany spent 2 years preparing me to accept Victoria as a suitable match for my son. She showed me Victoria's college photos, told me stories about her academic achievements, her family values, her potential to be molded into exactly the kind of wife Nathan needed. Molded? Eleanor's voice turned bitter. That was Brittany's word. She said Victoria had all the right qualities but needed guidance to reach her full potential. Brittany positioned herself as the perfect mentor to help Victoria transition into our world. And you believed her? I believed her because she seemed to genuinely care about Victoria's success. She talked about Victoria like a proud mentor talks about a promising protege. I thought about all the charity events, the country club functions, the social training Victoria had undergone. She was grooming Victoria. We both were, without realizing it. Brittany convinced me that Victoria needed time and support to adapt to our expectations. Every concern I raised about the relationship, Brittany had an answer for. Every doubt she addressed with examples of Victoria's progress. What kind of concerns? Eleanor looked uncomfortable. Class differences, social compatibility, whether Victoria would be able to handle the responsibilities that come with being Nathan's wife. The responsibilities of being rich, you mean. The responsibilities of being part of a family with significant business interests and social obligations. Nathan will inherit substantial holdings that require careful management, not just financially, but socially and politically. I couldn't hide my skepticism. And you didn't think Victoria could handle that? I didn't think any young woman from a working-class background could handle it without significant support. But Brittany assured me that Victoria was extraordinary, that with the right guidance, she could exceed even my expectations. So what changed? Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Yesterday, I received some very disturbing information about Brittany's motivations. She showed me a text exchange between Brittany and someone named Marcus. Brittany, Phase 1 complete. V is completely dependent on my approval now. Nathan's mother trusts my judgment about wedding decisions. Marcus, What about the sister problem? Brittany. Handled. Eleanor thinks Alexandra is the obstacle to Victoria's successful integration. Wedding party change was easy to justify. And the business angle? Brittany. Miguel Rivera Construction will get the Cross Industries subcontracting deal as soon as Nathan and V are married. Elena's connections will handle the rest. I stared at the screen. Who's Marcus and who's Elena?
Marcus is Brittany's boyfriend, a real estate developer who's been trying to break into the San Antonio market for years. And Elena, Eleanor's voice became grim. Elena is Brittany's business partner. They run what appears to be a matchmaking service, but it's actually a sophisticated networking scheme. I don't understand. They identify wealthy families with eligible sons. Then they find suitable middle-class women to elevate into those families. But the real goal isn't romance. It's access. Once their clients are married into wealthy families, Brittany and Elena use those connections to benefit their own business interests. My mind reeled. Victoria is a client? Victoria is a mark. The difference is that clients pay for the service. Marks provide the access that benefits the real clients. Like Marcus getting construction contracts through Nathan's family business. Exactly. And like Elena's import business getting preferential treatment from Cross Industries shipping partnerships. I thought about everything that had happened over the past week. So removing me from the wedding party was about removing the one person who might recognize that Victoria was being manipulated. Brittany convinced me that you were a negative influence, that you were holding Victoria back from reaching her potential. And you believed her. Eleanor's expression turned apologetic. I believed her because she showed me carefully edited text messages where Victoria complained about feeling judged by her family, about feeling like you disapproved of her relationship with Nathan. Victoria never said those things to me. No, but she said them to Brittany, who then used them to convince me that your family was creating obstacles to Victoria's happiness. I felt sick. So the whole thing about Nathan's family having concerns about my involvement was Brittany's invention. Nathan likes you. He's always spoken highly of you. If anything, he's been confused by the sudden changes to the wedding party. Does he know about any of this? I told him this morning. He's horrified. He had no idea that Brittany was manipulating the situation. What about Victoria? Does she know? Eleanor shook her head. Victoria believes everything Brittany has told her. She thinks Nathan's family required these changes. She thinks she's fighting for her relationship's survival. Because Brittany convinced her that your approval was conditional. Because Brittany spent months undermining Victoria's confidence while positioning herself as the only person who could help Victoria succeed. I stared out the window at the bustling Pearl District, watching tourists explore the shops and restaurants oblivious to the conversation that was reshaping my understanding of the past year. Mrs. Cross, Eleanor, why are you telling me this? Because I realize that I've been as manipulated as Victoria has, and because I think you're the only person who can help her see what's really happening. Victoria won't listen to me. She thinks I'm the problem. She thinks you're the problem because Brittany has convinced her that anyone who questions her new life is holding her back. But you're her sister. If anyone can break through Brittany's influence, it's you. How? Eleanor reached into her purse again and pulled out a manila envelope. I've been collecting information about Brittany's schemes since yesterday. Financial records, text messages, business filings, everything Victoria needs to see to understand how she's been used. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. What do you want me to do with this? I want you to give it to Victoria, before the wedding, before she makes the biggest mistake of her life. And if she doesn't believe it? Eleanor's expression was grim. Then we watch Brittany destroy everything Victoria holds dear, starting with her relationship with her family.
I looked down at the envelope in my hands. Inside was the evidence that could save my sister, or drive the final wedge between us if she refused to believe it. "There's something else," Eleanor said. "Brittany doesn't know that I've discovered her scheme. She's still operating under the assumption that I trust her completely. Which means we have an opportunity to expose her publicly, at the wedding, in front of everyone she's been manipulating." The idea was tempting, but the thought of destroying Victoria's wedding day made me hesitate. Eleanor, that would humiliate Victoria. What would humiliate Victoria more? Learning the truth now, or discovering years from now that her entire marriage was built on lies and manipulation? She had a point, but there was still one thing bothering me. Why should I trust you? A week ago, you wanted me removed from the wedding party. Eleanor met my eyes directly. Because a week ago, I believed someone I thought was looking out for my family's best interests. Now I know she was looking out for her own. And because, Alexandra, I've come to realize that the kind of woman who would abandon her family for my approval isn't the kind of woman I want my son to marry. She stood up, leaving her untouched latte on the table. "The wedding is in 5 weeks. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it soon." As I watched Nathan's mother walk away, I realized I was holding more than just evidence of Brittany's manipulation. I was holding the power to destroy my sister's life, or save it. The question was, which would it be?
5 weeks passed in a blur of internal debate and careful planning. I'd tried 3 times to approach Victoria directly with Eleanor's evidence, but each attempt had been blocked by Brittany's interference. Every time I called, Brittany was there. Every time I stopped by Victoria's apartment, Brittany had convinced her they had urgent wedding errands to run. It became clear that Brittany was actively keeping me away from my sister, probably sensing that I was a threat to her carefully constructed narrative. Meanwhile, Eleanor and I had been meeting regularly, piecing together the full scope of Brittany's operation. What we discovered was even more extensive than we'd initially realized. Brittany and Elena had been running their scheme for over 5 years, targeting at least 12 different families across Texas. They identified wealthy men with family businesses, then found suitable women to position as romantic interests. Once the marriages were established, they leveraged those relationships for business deals, social connections, and financial opportunities. Victoria wasn't their first victim, but she was potentially their biggest score. The Cross family's construction and development empire could provide access to millions of dollars in contracts and business partnerships. The night before the wedding, I sat in my apartment staring at the manila envelope that could change everything. Inside were financial records showing payments from Brittany's LLC to various matchmaking consultants, text messages revealing the calculated nature of Victoria's transformation, business proposals that outlined how Nathan's family connections would be monetized after the wedding. My phone rang. Eleanor. "Alexandra, are you still planning to go through with this?" "I don't know, Eleanor. What if we're wrong? What if Victoria really is happy with the choices she's made? With choices she was manipulated into making? But what if exposing Brittany destroys Victoria's marriage before it even begins? What if Nathan decides he can't trust someone who is so easily deceived?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "Nathan loves Victoria. He's told me so repeatedly, but he also deserves to know the truth about how their relationship began. And Victoria deserves the truth about Brittany. She does, but Alexandra, she also deserves the chance to make an informed decision about her future. Right now, she's operating based on lies." I looked out my window at the San Antonio skyline, twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably having her bachelorette party, surrounded by Brittany and a group of women she'd met through her new social circle. Women who saw her as Nathan Cross's fiancée, rather than Miguel and Carmen Rivera's daughter. "If I do this," I said finally, "there's no going back. Victoria might never forgive me. And if you don't do this, Victoria might spend years trapped in relationships and obligations that were built on deception. Is that really protecting her? Eleanor was right. Victoria deserved to know the truth, even if it meant destroying her perfect wedding day. How do we do this without humiliating her in front of 200 guests? We don't do it in front of the guests, we do it before the ceremony begins. We spent the next hour finalizing our plan. Eleanor would arrange for Victoria to come to the bridal suite an hour before the ceremony, ostensibly for a private blessing from Nathan's family. I would already be there, waiting with the evidence. What about Brittany? Leave Brittany to me. I'll make sure she's occupied. Saturday dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect October day that made San Antonio feel like paradise. The Pearl District venue was bustling with activity as vendors arrived to transform the historic space into Victoria's dream wedding setting. I dressed carefully in the navy blue dress I'd planned to wear as a regular guest, rather than the burgundy gown I'd originally bought as maid of honor. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I was attending my sister's wedding as an outsider, but I was about to become more involved in the day than anyone expected. The manila envelope sat in my purse like a weapon I hoped I wouldn't have to use. I arrived at the venue early before most of the guests and made my way to the bridal suite where Victoria would be getting ready. Eleanor had arranged for me to have access through the wedding planner, who believed I was delivering a special gift from Nathan's family.
The bridal suite was already decorated with white flowers and champagne flutes, waiting for Victoria's arrival with her entourage. I positioned myself by the window, watching for any sign of my sister. At 2:30, 3 hours before the ceremony, Victoria's car pulled up. She stepped out looking radiant in a silk robe, her hair in curlers, her face glowing with happiness. Behind her came Brittany, of course, along with 2 other women I didn't recognize, probably friends from Victoria's new social circle. They made their way upstairs, their laughter echoing through the venue. I heard them enter the suite next door, followed by the sounds of champagne corks popping and excited chatter. At 3:15, Eleanor texted, "Brittany distracted. Mrs. Henderson will bring Victoria to you in 5 minutes." My heart pounded as I heard footsteps in the hallway. A knock at the door. "Miss Rivera, I have the bride here for the family blessing." Victoria entered the room looking confused, but beautiful. Her wedding dress hanging perfectly, her makeup flawless. She looked like a fairy tale princess, which made what I was about to do feel even more terrible. "Alex, what are you doing here? Mrs. Henderson said Nathan's mother wanted to give me some kind of blessing." "Victoria, we need to talk." Her expression immediately became guarded. "If this is about the wedding party situation again, it's about Brittany." "Brittany? Alex, I don't have time for whatever issue you have with my maid of honor. I'm getting married in 2 hours. I pulled the manila envelope from my purse. "Victoria, please, just look at this. 5 minutes. If I'm wrong, I'll leave and never bring it up again." "What is that?" "Evidence that Brittany has been manipulating you, that your entire relationship with Nathan was orchestrated by her for business reasons." Victoria's face flushed with anger. "That's ridiculous. Alex, I can't believe you're doing this on my wedding day. I'm doing this because I love you, because the sister I grew up with would want to know if someone was using her. Using me for what? For access to Nathan's family business, for construction contracts that will benefit Brittany's real clients." Victoria stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "This is insane." "Is it? Victoria, when did you start wanting different things from life? When did you decide Carlos wasn't good enough? When did you decide our family was holding you back?" "I grew up, Alex. I realized I wanted more." "Or Brittany convinced you that what you had wasn't enough." Victoria turned toward the door. "I'm not listening to this." "Then don't listen to me. Listen to Nathan's mother." That stopped her. "What?" "Eleanor is the one who gave me this information. She figured out that Brittany has been manipulating both of your families." "Nathan's mother said that?" "She realized that Brittany has been planning your relationship for 3 years, since before you even met Nathan.
That's impossible. Look at the evidence, Victoria. Just look at it. If I'm wrong, you can throw me out and go marry Nathan with a clear conscience. But if I'm right... Victoria stared at me for a long moment, then slowly reached for the envelope. What happened next would determine whether my sister's wedding day ended in joy or devastation, and whether our family would ever recover from the choices we'd all made in the name of love and protection.
Victoria's hands trembled as she opened the manila envelope. I watched her face change as she pulled out the first document, a business proposal titled Rivera Cross Construction Partnership, Leveraging Personal Relationships for Market Access. "What is this?" she whispered. "Keep reading." The proposal outlined how Brittany's business partner Marcus would secure lucrative subcontracting deals with Cross Industries once Victoria was married into the family. It detailed projected revenue streams, timeline for implementation, and specific projects already identified for collaboration. Victoria's face went from pale to gray. This has my name on it, and Nathan's. "Look at the date, Victoria." She checked the header. "This is from 6 months ago, before Nathan even proposed?" "They've been planning to use your marriage for business deals since the beginning." Victoria rifled through more documents, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Bank statements showing payments from Brittany's LLC to relationship consultants. Text messages between Brittany and Elena discussing Phase 2 implementation. Email chains about managing family resistance to ensure successful integration. Then she found the text exchange between Brittany and Marcus from the day after our family dinner. Brittany: "Sister problem escalating. Victoria's getting emotional about family pressure." Marcus: "Can you contain it?" Brittany: "Working on it. May need to accelerate timeline. If Victoria starts questioning the narrative, everything falls apart." Marcus: "What about the construction angle?" Brittany: "Miguel Rivera's company is desperate for commercial contracts. Once Nathan's married to V, the family dynamics will force cooperation. Eleanor Cross already mentioned wanting to help Victoria's family." Victoria's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the papers. They planned this. They actually planned this. There's more. The next document was a psychological profile of Victoria, written by Elena and dated 18 months ago, 6 months before Victoria had even broken up with Carlos. Subject demonstrates strong family loyalty, but underlying ambition that can be redirected. Previous relationship with musician indicates susceptibility to romantic idealization over practical considerations. Recommend introducing concept of deserving better through graduated exposure to luxury lifestyle and strategic social comparison. Victoria sank into a chair, still staring at the papers. They studied me like I was a lab rat. They identified you as the perfect target because of your family values and your relationship with Carlos. They knew if they could break that relationship and isolate you from your support system, they could rebuild your entire identity around what they wanted. Victoria found another document, a timeline of her transformation with detailed notes about each phase. Month 1 to 3, establish trust through luxury experiences and social elevation. Month 4 to 6, introduce dissatisfaction with current relationship through strategic comparison. Month 7 to 9, facilitate breakup and introduce target romantic interest. Month 10 to 12, solidify new relationship while minimizing contact with the original support system. Alex, this is sick. They turned my life into a business plan. Keep reading. The final section detailed the wedding strategy. Removing sister from wedding party essential to maintaining subject's dependency on consultant guidance. Family resistance indicates potential for exposure if not properly managed. Recommend positioning sister as obstacle to successful integration. Victoria looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. They made me choose between you and Nathan's family. They made you think
you had to choose. Victoria, Nathan's family never had a problem with me. Eleanor told me Nathan has always spoken highly of our family. But Brittany lied about everything. Victoria stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the venue's courtyard. Below, wedding guests were beginning to arrive, dressed in their elegant best for what they believed would be a celebration of love. How could I have been so stupid? You weren't stupid. You were manipulated by professionals who do this for a living. But Carlos, Alex, I left Carlos. I broke his heart because Brittany convinced me he wasn't enough, and he was perfect. He loved me for who I actually was, not for who he could turn me into. Carlos still loves you. Victoria! She whirled around. What? I talked to him. Victoria, he never understood what happened. He thought you'd just fallen out of love with him. I never fell out of love with him. Brittany just convinced me that love wasn't enough if it couldn't provide security and social advancement. Victoria looked down at her wedding dress, the beautiful gown that now felt like a costume. What am I supposed to do now? There are 200 people downstairs expecting a wedding.
What do you want to do? I want to go back in time and never listen to Brittany Walsh. I want to call Carlos and tell him I'm sorry. I want to stand up to Nathan's mother instead of letting Brittany convince me I wasn't good enough for their family. You still can. Can what? Stand up to this. Victoria, you don't have to go through with a wedding that was built on lies and manipulation. But Nathan... Alex, Nathan doesn't know any of this. He genuinely loves me. Does he love you, or does he love the version of you that Brittany created? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, considering this. I don't know who I am anymore. These past months, I've been trying so hard to be what everyone else wanted that I lost track of what I wanted. So, figure it out. Right now. What do you want? I want my family back. I want to not be ashamed of where I come from. I want to stop pretending that my parents' house isn't good enough, or that Jordan isn't successful enough, or that you aren't sophisticated enough. Those were never your thoughts. Those were Brittany's thoughts that she convinced you to adopt. Victoria looked at the evidence scattered around the room, months of manipulation laid bare in black and white. How do I face everyone? How do I tell Nathan that our entire relationship was orchestrated by my maid of honor for business reasons? We tell them together. Victoria, Nathan deserves to know the truth too. If he really loves you, he'll understand that you were as much a victim in this as anyone. And if he doesn't, then he's not the man you thought he was. A knock at the door interrupted us. Miss Rivera, we need the bride for photos in 15 minutes. Victoria and I looked at each other. In 15 minutes, she was supposed to be taking pre-ceremony photos with Brittany and the wedding party, smiling and pretending everything was perfect. What do I do about Brittany? Whatever you want to do. You have evidence that she's been manipulating you for business gain. You have every right to confront her. Victoria's expression hardened, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of the strong, confident woman my sister used to be. I want her gone. I want her out of my wedding, out of my life, and I want everyone to know what she did. Are you sure? Victoria, Nathan deserves to know the truth too. If he really loves you, he'll understand that you were as much a victim in this as anyone. And if he doesn't, then he's not the man you thought he was. Victoria straightened her shoulders, looking more like herself than she had in months. I am sure. Let's go ruin Brittany Walsh's day the way she's been ruining mine. As we prepared to leave the bridal suite, I realized that my gift to Victoria hadn't been the manila envelope full of evidence. It had been the truth that would set her free. Victoria and I walked into the main bridal suite like generals entering a battlefield. The room was filled with the excited chatter of bridesmaids, the pop of champagne corks, and Brittany's voice directing everyone's movements like a seasoned stage manager. Victoria, there you are! Brittany rushed over, her smile bright and controlling. We were getting worried. Photos start in 10 minutes and your makeup needs a touch-up. Brittany, Victoria's voice was calm, steady. We need to talk.
Of course, sweetie, but can it wait until after photos? The photographer is on a tight schedule. No, it can't wait. Something in Victoria's tone made the room fall quiet. The other bridesmaids sensed the tension and slowly stopped their preparations to watch. Victoria held up the manila envelope. I know what you've been doing. Brittany's smile flickered for just a moment before returning full force. What do you mean, honey? What's in the envelope? Business proposals, financial records, text messages, a psychological profile you had written about me 18 months ago. The color drained from Brittany's face, but she maintained her composure. Victoria, I think you're confused. Maybe wedding stress is... I'm not confused, Brittany. I'm finally seeing clearly for the first time in over a year. Victoria opened the envelope and pulled out the business proposal. Would you like me to read this out loud? The part where you and Marcus plan to use my marriage to Nathan for construction contracts? Or maybe the section where you detail how to isolate me from my family to maintain control? One of the bridesmaids gasped. Victoria, what's going on? What's going on is that my maid of honor has been running a long-term con, using my life as the foundation for her business scheme. Brittany took a step forward, her voice becoming sharp. You're being dramatic, Victoria. Whatever Alexandra has told you, Alexandra didn't tell me anything. Eleanor Cross did. Nathan's mother figured out what you were doing and provided the evidence. Mrs. Cross? That's impossible. Eleanor trusts me completely. Eleanor trusted you until she realized you've been manipulating her too. Did you think she wouldn't eventually notice that every concern she raised about me was immediately addressed by convenient changes you suggested? Victoria pulled out the timeline document. Phase 1 through 4, Brittany. You documented everything. Breaking up my relationship with Carlos, introducing me to Nathan, isolating me from my family, turning me into someone who would be ashamed of where I came from. Victoria, you wanted those changes. You told me you were unhappy. I told you I was worried about Carlos's financial future. You turned that into dissatisfaction with our entire relationship. You wanted more from life. I wanted to support the man I loved. You convinced me that loving him was settling. The room was completely silent now, everyone transfixed by the confrontation unfolding in wedding white and designer gowns. And my family? Victoria's voice rose. Did I want to be separated from them too, Brittany? Did I ask you to convince me that my sister wasn't sophisticated enough for your precious social circle? Your family was holding you back. My family was protecting me from people like you. Victoria turned to address the other bridesmaids. Ladies, I'm sorry you had to witness this, but I think you should know that Brittany Walsh has been playing a very long game with my life. Everything you've seen over the past year, my transformation, my relationship with Nathan, even this wedding, has been orchestrated to benefit her business interests. One of the bridesmaids, a woman I recognized from Victoria's new social circle, spoke up hesitantly. Victoria, maybe you should calm down. Pre-wedding jitters can make you paranoid. Paranoid? Victoria laughed bitterly. Sarah, did you know that Brittany has been documenting your life too? Your relationship with your husband, your family dynamics, your financial situation? Sarah's face went white. What? Victoria pulled out another document from the envelope. Ana's notes on potential future targets. You're on the list, Sarah, right under married to pharmaceutical heir, family business opportunities identified. Sarah grabbed the paper, scanning the contents. Oh my God, this has details about my marriage that I've only told Brittany. Because Brittany collects information about everyone in her circle. You're not her friends, you're her investment portfolio. Brittany finally dropped all pretense. You ungrateful little burl, do you have any idea what I've done for you? Where would you be without my help? Happy, she said simply. I'd be happy with Carlos, close to my family and comfortable with who I am, instead of constantly trying to prove I'm worthy of acceptance from people who were never actually judging me. Carlos is a loser musician who would have kept you trapped in mediocrity forever.
Carlos is a man who loved me for who I was, not for who he could profit from turning me into.
The door opened and Nathan walked in, looking confused by the obvious tension. Victoria? Is everything okay? Mrs. Henderson said there was some kind of emergency. Victoria turned to face her fiancé, still in her wedding dress, but no longer looking like a bride preparing for the happiest day of her life. Nathan, we need to talk. About how we met, about Brittany's role in our relationship, about whether what we have is real or manufactured. Nathan looked between Victoria and Brittany, clearly sensing the gravity of the situation. What do you mean manufactured? Victoria handed him the business proposal. I mean, Brittany has been planning our relationship for 3 years to benefit her business partners. As Nathan read, his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to anger. This can't be real. It's real. Eleanor Cross's voice came from the doorway. She entered the room with calm authority, Nathan's father behind her. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it's time everyone understood what's been happening. Nathan looked at his mother. Mom, what's going on? What's going on is that Miss Walsh has been running a sophisticated manipulation scheme using your relationship with Victoria as the centerpiece. Nathan's father stepped forward, his business demeanor evident. We've spent the morning reviewing all the evidence. This woman has been planning to monetize our family's business relationships through your marriage. The wedding, Nathan said slowly, looking around at the decorated venue, the flowers, the guests beginning to gather outside. What do we do about the wedding? Victoria looked at Nathan, then at me, then at our parents who had just appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. We tell everyone the truth. We explain that while Nathan and I care about each other, our relationship was built on manipulation and lies. We cancel the ceremony and start over, if there's actually something real between us worth starting over for. Nathan nodded slowly. I love you, Victoria, but I love the real you, not whoever Brittany was trying to turn you into. I don't know who the real me is anymore. I need time to figure that out. Then we take that time. Brittany made one last desperate attempt to regain control. You're all making a terrible mistake. Victoria, you're throwing away the best opportunity of your life because your jealous sister poisoned you against me. Victoria turned to face Brittany one final time. No, Brittany. I'm reclaiming my life from someone who stole it. 2 hours later, the wedding guests had been told that the ceremony was postponed due to family circumstances. Most left confused, but understanding. The vendors repaid, the flowers were donated to a local hospital, and Victoria, Nathan, and I sat in the empty venue, still in our wedding clothes, trying to figure out what came next. I need to call Carlos, Victoria said quietly. Are you sure? Nathan asked, without apparent jealousy, more like genuine concern for her well-being. I need to apologize. I need to explain what happened. I don't know if we can fix what Brittany broke, but I need to try. Victoria looked at me. Alex, I'm sorry for everything, for choosing strangers over family, for letting someone convince me you weren't good enough when you're the best person I know. We're family, I said simply. We'll figure it out. Nathan stood up. I should give you two some space. Victoria, when you're ready to talk about whether there's something real between us worth exploring, call me, but take all the time you need. As Nathan walked away, Victoria turned to me. Do you think I ruined everything? I think you saved everything that mattered. 6 months later, Victoria and Carlos were engaged again. Nathan had started dating someone he'd met at a bookstore, someone who'd never heard of Brittany Walsh. And I was the maid of honor at a wedding that was authentic, joyful, and filled with people who loved Victoria for exactly who she was. Brittany Walsh was arrested 3 weeks after the canceled wedding for fraud and identity theft related to her manipulation scheme. She's currently serving 18 months in federal prison. Sometimes the most devastating gifts are the ones that set you free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.